All right. Insighted Podcast. Today is June 21st, 2020. And that's important for a lot of reasons. Number one, let's start. 33 years ago, a boy was born. His name was me. I was born on this day. Number two, the day I was born, also today as well, is and was Father's Day. Pretty cool. It's also the first day of summer solstice, and that means it's the longest day of the year. The sun is in the sky the highest for us. So sun rose at, I think, 5:57 a.m., and it won't set until 9:14. And above all of those, most importantly, today is Go Skateboarding Day. And let me think, where should I start? So 21, when I first turned 21 is the first time I remember celebrating Go Skateboarding Day. And that was actually a really rough day because 21st birthday, I went out and celebrated at midnight. Went pretty hard, typical. Woke up on the bathroom floor. I was in California at the time, and that was in a bathroom of a house that had 6 skateboarders in it, and I don't think that house even had any cleaning products. So, yeah. And okay, so I woke up. My buddy was dragging me all around the place. We went to Venice Beach. First time I remember seeing, they had some event, like a giant skateboard there, and they were celebrating Go Skateboarding Day, but I was just sitting on a curb, and I couldn't function or even want to do anything. All I want to do is go home, and I kept telling my buddy, just take me home, dude. He's like, no, we got stuff we got to do. Takes me all around. We go to this pool party. I'm like, dude, I just want to go home and lay down. Please, let's go. He keeps delaying and delaying. Finally, he's like, all right, we can go home. I go home, walk into a surprise birthday party. Girlfriend at the time spent all this money, catered food, a keg, and all this stuff. Everybody's there, and I was super hungover. I think I had 1 beer. I smoked, and I was the first one in bed. So that was the first time I remember celebrating Go Skateboarding Day. And now I want to celebrate Go Skateboarding Day by kind of highlighting. Well, actually, I want to share what I've learned as a blind skateboarder for those people who are visually impaired and blind and want to get into skating, or they are currently skating. I want to share my process, how I do everything, and yeah, hopefully it helps you out. So, if you're looking into getting into skateboarding, first thing you need to do is buy a skateboard, and those can range anywhere from super cheap, crappy boards for I don't even know. You could probably get a really cheap one online for $60, $80. But best thing you want to do is you want to find a local skate shop. Call them or go into that shop, and most likely they're going to be cool. They're going to help you out, answer all the questions that you need to know. You're going to want to pick a deck and all that stuff, figure out what size you want to ride. For the most part, unless you're a little kid, really tiny, 5 years old and under, or 6 or 7, you can get a really miniature board that's a little bit smaller. But if you're older, probably start with a size 8 inches wide. And then if you just want to cruise, you're going to pick a different kind of wheel, a soft wheel it's going to be larger and softer. It's going to be a lot easier to roll over cracks and all this stuff. But if you want to learn tricks and stuff like that, you can get a smaller wheel. But go into your local skate shop, ask them. They're going to help you out. I'd recommend skating a reel board. That's the one that's hanging behind me right now. It's all thrashed, though. That's one of the first Braille boards that I skated, which is not currently available. I don't know if we're going to do another run or not. But a reel board, Thunder Truck, Spitfire wheels, Bone Swiss bearings, and you'll be set. Now, you kind of have 2 options. One, you can kind of find I would recommend just finding a giant open parking lot that has nothing, like no parking curbs or poles or anything, and get yourself a little Bluetooth speaker, put that thing on the ground, put whatever music you want on, and that's going to be your starting point. So then you can just start learning to just stand on your board, cruise, and roll around, and you'll be able to reference that speaker so you don't get turned around or lost. You can always go back to that speaker. Sound is super helpful when skating as a visually impaired or blind person. I personally don't use it too much, but it is helpful for that scenario when you have an open space and you need to know, you need kind of a reference to start from. And it's also helpful for when you start skating obstacles and you need to maybe figure out where an obstacle starts or where it ends, where there's a drop off. Maybe you need to know if you're inside of like a pool or a mini ramp. You need to know kind of maybe where the center of the ramp is or where like a corner of a pool is. You can use sound and stuff to help guide you and keep you orientated. I don't like it. You know, you can use a little beeper box you can purchase on Amazon or anywhere. A tiny little box. You can do like $10. They're about the size of an index finger, kind of rectangular. AAA battery in there, and it has one switch on it, on and off. And it just beep, 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 beep. It constantly beeps. Super annoying. Helpful. Cheap, because your board's bound to smash it and break it. I like to use just a Bluetooth speaker, though. Something that has a more satisfying noise coming out of it. And those you can get Bluetooth where you can link multiple speakers together. I think JBL are kind of speakers you can get. You can link them all together, so you can have like 3 speakers playing the same sound at once, and then you can get multiple reference points. Maybe if it's a super long quarter pipe or ledge, you can have one at the start, the end, and right in the middle, and then you'll be able to hear and have a better idea of where you're at and where you're going. So that's sound. But maybe you're deaf as well. How about smell? Smell's probably the least used sense when skateboarding. I don't think I've ever used it. I mean, maybe if there's like a spot by a donut shop or something, you might be able to find that spot a little bit better. But yeah, it doesn't really help. What else? Actually, with sound, I didn't think about sound. Also helps when I'm skating like street spots. It can help. Like I'll even listen to like the environment. So if there's like a road, I'll know like, okay, if I get turned around, I know that road is on the east. It's facing the east, and that can help me out. So anything you can use with that. So, but yeah, and then the number one sense that I use is the feeling of touch, because I'm using my white cane constantly when skating. And the cane I use a shorter cane when skating. I'm 5'11". I typically walk. My everyday use cane is 58 inches because it's right at 5 feet. Easy to measure things out when you need to. And then when I skate, though, it's a 54 inch, and even I can go smaller. Smaller is a lot easier than going longer because you want to be able to get close to obstacles. When you find them, you want to be, pretty much right next to it to help, I guess, to just have a better idea of, or if you're close to the object, then when you pop onto it, you're going to be right next to it. You're going to be ready to actually, ollie or do whatever you're going to do when you get close to it. What am I trying to say? What? I use a longer cane only when I skate gaps because I'm going to be skating a lot faster than I were to be skating a ledge or anything else like that. And I pulled the cane out in front of me, and that gives me a little bit more time. So when I feel that drop, I have more time to actually react and pop and do what I need to do. Other than that, though, I keep it shorter cane. I've been really dabbling and thinking about starting my own cane company. I've been looking into it. I got to find out. Like anything, there's a million things that go into it. Trying to figure out the best grip, the best materials, how I want to design them, and all that stuff. So that's the cane right now. I get hooked up through Ambutech. They send me some canes every now and then. But I just use a standard. Typically, I use an aluminum cane if I'm purchasing the cane because they're cheap, disposable, and when you're skating, they get bent up, broken. I could break a cane the first day I use it. They do take a minute to kind of break in, like a brand new pair of shoes or something like that. They'll feel super stiff, rigid at first. Eventually, they'll get a little flex to them, and they'll feel a bit more comfortable. But they get beat up, man. They're literally like all bent and break them all the time. I just keep all the random pieces, spare parts, and to save money, I just piece pieces together. As one will break, I'll just take one apart and add that piece to it. So hold on to your old cane parts because they'll prove to be useful. Now, I prefer the golf grip when it comes to a grip. It seems to be the best because my hands will start getting super sweaty, especially in the summer. The golf grip seems to be the best. I mean, you still get some slip every now and then, and then I use a collapsible cane, just because it's easy to fold up, I can carry multiple of a bunch of them in my bag instead of having a bunch of long canes I got to carry around. And then when it comes to the tip, so the tip of the cane, I have a couple tips here. I use the standard marshmallow tip. For the video, people watching, literally looks like a marshmallow. And this one actually has a rotating head on it. There's actually a bearing inside of here, which I replaced with a bone Swiss bearing. But these things break. The spinny ones, marshmallow ones, they shatter. Usually they break the first day I use it. So I don't even mess with it. I use just a standard marshmallow tip that's just literally a solid piece. And it will eventually get shaved down and eventually look like this. And this thing is just down to a tiny nub. There's actually a hole in the center that me and my son say when it gets to that point, it turns into a little anthill. And you really want to avoid getting this small because the smaller your tip gets, the more it gets caught on cracks and stuff like that. So the freshest, newest tip you can get is going to be better. You're going to get less drag, and it gets annoying when you start getting caught up on things. It really drive you crazy. And yes, there's a couple. I get them from Maxi Aids, and they that's like a service that you can get pretty much anything for vision impaired and blind, any kind of adaptive products, stuff like that. And they have like a harder material one that's supposed to last longer. I use them. I guess it's lasted longer. Now I'm thinking about it, but I mean, it just depends because I've literally went to the skate park and I was skating in the pool and stuff, so my tip was constantly dragging along the ground, and I wore through a tip in one day, so that doesn't really matter. And then I have this. This is it's like this has like a disc, and it has some kind of. It almost has like a. I'm going to call it like a joint in it. So it can kind of move freely. It's this wider disc, and it can kind of, as you glide along the ground, less chance of kind of getting snagged and caught and stuff like that. But this is kind of heavier, a little cumbersome. I think I used this one time. Could be helpful for certain spots where it might be a bit rougher. But go-to is marshmallow still. The other tip that I would say gets the second to most use is the snowball tip. And I have one here. This one also rolls and spins freely, and it literally looks like a snowball. These ones get worn down pretty quick. There's a seam in the center where the ball was kind of put together, and once that seam gets low, this thing will just crack in half and open up. Also, if you maybe get angry and you hit this on the ground, it will shatter pretty easily. So these don't last too long, but these are great for I know my buddy Justin Bishop, he's another skateboarder who's blind. He uses these a lot when he skates transition, just because it rolls a lot more freely, and when you're going back and forth on a ramp, it kind of glides a little bit better. And he likes these, but this is also a lot heavier than your standard Marshmallow tip, and that's annoying to me. I like minimal as I can get it. I don't want to use sound. I want just tiny little cane, lightweight, less crap I have to worry about. You're not gonna shatter a Marshmallow tip. Solid plastic. So yes, that's what you want to know. So if you're gonna start out, get yourself a Marshmallow tip. Get yourself a cane, slightly shorter. Buy a cheap one, because over time they're just gonna get beat up and you're gonna break it. And bring a spare cane to your session, because if you do break your cane, you don't want to be walking around with a limp cane. Not easy to navigate. Okay, now getting into, as you're getting more comfortable rolling around, skating, you can find yourself a local skate park. If you don't have a local skate park, you can get yourself a little community together. Go to the Tony Hawk Foundation website, and you can learn everything you need to know about how to approach your community members, all the ducks you need to get in a row, all the information you need that can help you approach your city and be prepared and ready to explain why you need a park. And there's plenty of funding out there right now. Cities want to invest in things that are going to grow the community and keep the younger youth in there and everything, and just whatever is positive for your city, they're going to want to invest in. And a skate park hits all of those. So if you don't have a park, fight for one, get one created. And on top of that, make sure when that park is designed that you voice your opinion that you want that park to be accessible for every kind of rider. Visually impaired, in a wheelchair, WCMX, because 99% of parks I go to, I'd say 90% of the park isn't accessible for me to skate, or at least there could have been very minimal things that could have been done to that park to make it more accessible for whether you're in a wheelchair or especially if you're visually impaired or blind. Because the size of objects, I'm going to say, is probably the most important thing when designing a park for somebody who's skating and is blind. Because when I skate a ledge, when I start, I'll have my starting point, and I'll, line myself up, and I'll push, and it takes me a second to figure out where the ledge is with my cane, find it, touch it with my hand, and by that time, I've usually passed up the end of the ledge, and I've gone too far because the object is too short. Same with a quarter pipe. Nothing scarier than trying to aim towards a quarter pipe that's only 4 feet wide, and every time you just feel like you're going to fly off the side. So as big as you can make these things is going to help and be helpful. Your park, you never know what you're going to have there. But yes, so when you advocate for your park, tell them you want it to be accessible. You can consult me as well. I do consulting for that stuff. So I know in the future, park is going to be a lot better. Now, the first time you go to your park, I would recommend going either really early in the morning when it's less crowded, because it gets real hectic. Sometimes there's bikes and scooters, and they have soft wheels, and you can't even hear them coming. So go early when it's less crowded. And you can always ask any skateboarder there, because the skateboarding community is super inclusive, really open. 99% of the time, someone's going to help you out, and they'll help kind of guide you around the park, get you orientated for the first couple times, and let you know kind of what you have there to skate. Or this is interesting, actually. If you're completely blind, like me, you can go at nighttime when nobody's there, and then you don't have to worry about anybody there. But be aware that most parks close sunrise and sunset, so you'll probably get kicked out, especially if you're near houses. The park I live by is kind of offset, not near houses, so I can get away with that. And yeah, also, skateboarders and bikers and stuff, they like to bring random objects into your skate park and use them as obstacles. So you always have to use your cane, no matter how many times you've been there, and scan your environment to make sure you have a clear path from where you start to where what you're gonna skate, and much further, even where you land and we're gonna continue to roll onto. You have to have everything mapped out and cleared to know where your obstacles are. It's super crucial. There was remember last year there was this bike rack at the skate park, and every time I went, it was in a different section. So I have to do the scan every time. So, yep, super important. Now, when you're actually skating, when I skate an obstacle, the most important thing that I have to keep in mind is, where do I start? Because starting in the same spot gives me the ability to kind of get my timing down. It gives me some consistency to figure out, if I start here and I push once, I'm going to have this much speed, and I know that I'm going to hit, this exact point on the obstacle. And at that point, once I have that down and getting warmed up, the first step, if you have maybe some residual vision, always use as much the vision that you have. Couple helpful things for there. You can. So sometimes I used to put tape on the ground, but that's if you have a little bit. You gotta kind of have some decent vision to really pick up tape, or you have to do really thick lines of tape. Hard to pick up most of the time, especially on kind of a gray dull cement. Even if you have a good contrast, it's kind of weird to use that. But you can do that. I used to skate tennis courts a lot, and the tennis courts had this great contrast between the white lines and the dark ground, and I could use that as a reference to kind of get me to an object. And then your most important tool is your white cane, because that's going to help first identify where the obstacle is, and that's going to get you even a little bit closer to whatever you're skating. But that doesn't help you be very precise. I can remember, so I've been totally blind for about a year and a half. And the first time I filmed a montage for Gencom online, a skate park edit. It's the first time I filmed anything totally blind. And I was kind of really freaked out because I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to kind of, live up to the expectations that I kind of have built for myself. Having a little bit of vision, because even that little bit of sight can help you on a lot as to knowing where something is and where you're at. That would help me see, like if I was skating a ledge, I wouldn't be able to see the ledge, but I would time my sessions at the skate park where the sun would cast a shadow, and I'd be able to pick up that shadow and give me a reference as to kind of where that ledge was at. Because I had really good contrast from the dark shadow to the super light pavement. And I used to, what am I talking about? So then I lost the remaining of my sight, and I was like having a hard time with certain tricks that got very technical, where I had to be really precise. So out of kind of necessity, I started using my hand. My cane is in my right hand. I skate regular, and my hand would go down and touch the ledge or whatever the obstacle was, and that kind of gave me like a even better understanding of where I was, how how high the obstacle was, exactly where it was, and I was able to be a lot more precise as to kind of whether I'm setting one truck on a nose or whatever I'm doing. Game changer right there. That was huge, especially when I started skating rails, flat bars, and stuff like that, where you got to be super on point. That's going to be your best way to do it. Cane one hand, figure out where it is, align yourself, start super slow, low and slow, baby. Start slow, and then as your cane's kind of gliding along an obstacle, then you reach down and touch it with your other hand, and then bam, you kind of have like this. It's like a triangulated. It's like triangulated information. So you have like your feet on your board, your cane on the ledge and the obstacle, whatever it is, and then your hand, and you know exactly where you are. That's the best method I've found so far. I'm able to do pretty much anything. The only thing that is super difficult that I haven't figured out is skating a rail, because I'm not able to guide myself to the rail unless, I know Justin Bishop's been trying a rail for like a month, and he uses a rope that's tied to it at about a 10-degree angle. So he kind of follows that rope, and then when he feels it drop off with his cane, he knows he has to pop. But I can't even explain to you how scary that is, because without actually touching the rail or whatever it is that you're jumping onto, you're still not 100% sure as to exactly what your angle is, where you're going, where you're going to get on to the rail at, how far down you're going to be. And it's, man, that's sketchy. I can't wait to see that. So, yes. What else? Start low and start slow. When I learn things, I skate so slow, and even when I'm in the streets, I skate pretty slow. It's kind of sucks a lot of times, but it's kind of where I'm at right now. What else? Covered parks. When to go. We covered canes. I feel like I am forgetting something. Oh, your board. When you get your board, you're going to want to, so the nose and the tail of your board, on a 90% of boards, the nose and the tail is different. The tail tends to be slightly smaller, and the nose tends to be slightly larger. And as you get more proficient and more experience with skating, this is going to mean a lot. You're going to want to know what your nose is. And that's not something you can easily identify off a feel, unless you have some crazy weird board. So you're going to need some kind of marker. And I started by putting a sticker underneath the bottom of my board, underneath the wheel well, at the nose of my board. But that was kind of annoying after a while, because I'd have to like feel the bottom of my board. And I eventually started rolling up a little sticker, and I would put it underneath the grip tape on the nose of my board, so that when I hold the board in a more natural way, my thumb touches it, and I can feel the actual bump raised on the grip tape. And the grip tape it's literally like sandpaper on the top of your board that helps your feet stick to it. So that's my hint. That's my tip. You're going to want to do that. I thought I just heard something trippy. But yeah, put that bump right underneath your nose, and then you'll be able to quickly identify, like right when you're standing and ready to go. It takes the least amount of time to know where the nose and tail is. They do sell boards, a couple of skaters who have the same nose and tail shape on each end, but 99% of boards are different. And as you skate, your trucks will start to kind of get grooved in certain ways, and they'll lean, and it's going to feel awkward if your board's reversed and backwards. So important to know what your nose is. And actually, fun fact, the board above my head right now has on the raised braille board that they made, did a beveled nose, they call it. So there's an actual indent on the nose, which I could feel with my fingers. But again, I don't know when or if we're going to do another run on those boards. I hope so, but eventually I got to get that beveled nose back, because that was actually super helpful. And yeah, I'm not going to do questions today. I set up an email, so you can email me with questions. If you want to either direct message me on my Instagram, Dan the Mancina. That's the best way, easiest way to get a hold of me. Any questions for future podcasts, anything you have in mind. And then you can also email me at insightedpodcast@gmail.com. Any questions you can have. about anything about skating, blindness, anything under the sun. And yeah, I think I'm going to call it there. Go out and skate, enjoy, have fun. Much love, keep pushing.